Why are you here? Think about that for a second. Why are you here? Some of you would be quick to answer, I'm here because my wife dragged me here. Some people saying, I'm here because my husband dragged me here. We're here today because our kids needed some churching up. I'm here today because of a court order. That's not what I'm asking. Not why are you here in this room, but why are you here on this earth? Why are you here? What is your purpose? What is your mission? What is your reason to live? Why do you get out of bed in the morning and press into the unknown? Why are you here? This is a question that really has an impact on how we function, not just emotionally and psychologically. It actually affects our physical well-being. Over the last few weeks, I read a number of studies of organizations that have studied the impact on the physical well-being of people who have either a clear sense of purpose or who have no sense of purpose. In 2020, there was an NIH study that was commissioned that found that people with a clear sense of purpose suffer from lower instances of heart disease. They also, not surprisingly, have a higher pain tolerance. That same study found that they have a 33% lower probability of having a sleep disorder and a 22% lower possibility of having either an eating disorder or a digestive disorder. They even found that there was a connection between having a clear sense of purpose and your ability to avoid suffering from addictive behavior, such as smoking or alcohol abuse or drug abuse. There was a 5-year study that was commissioned by the School of Public Health that was published in 2022 in the School of Preventive Medicine, where they studied the physical effects of clear life purpose on people's lives. And they found that people without a clear sense of purpose were 2.7 times more likely to suffer from heart disease, just over 2 times more likely to suffer from digestive disorder, and they found some indication that people living without purpose actually were more vulnerable to suffering from cancer. Over a number of years, they found that the mortality risk was increasing if people had a low sense of purpose. Their mortality risk went up by 2.5 times, versus a person who had a high sense of purpose was completely at average. The most interesting study that I read studied people 65 years and older, and it measured their longevity of life in relation to their certainty of their purpose. And what they found over 60 months of the study was that people who had no clear purpose in their final chapter of their life were actually 2.5 or 36.5% more likely to have a higher mortality rate. They even found that there was evidence of early onset dementia and Alzheimer's at a 2-fold rate over people who had a clear sense of purpose. But it's not just the science that tells us that there is an impact on whether or not we understand the meaning of our life, the purpose of our life, on our physical and emotional health. We just know it. Culturally, we are aware that living without a purpose is a catastrophic way to live. It was Carl Jung, one of the forefounders of clinical psychotherapy, who said this: "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light of the darkness of mere being." Your life has to have a purpose, is what Jung is saying. It was the evangelist, Reverend Billy Sunday, who put it this way: more men fail through a lack of purpose than a lack of talent. Even Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the classic agnostics, said, to forget one's purpose is the commonest form of stupidity. The poet Robert Burns said, the purpose of life is a life of purpose. That famous theologian Tim Tebow said, regardless of whatever I do, I know what my purpose is, to make a difference in people's lives. And the front man for the band U2, Bono, put it this way: when you align yourself with God's purpose, as described in the scriptures, something special happens in your life. And then there was the observation of the young Galilean rabbi named Jesus of Nazareth, who said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What does poverty of spirit have to do with purpose in life? Well, I'm glad you asked. Everything. It is the beginning of how we find our purpose. We are blessed when we are poor in spirit, for then we understand the kingdom of heaven and our place in it. If you're asking yourself, why am I here today? I will tell you why you are here. You are here today to find out why you are here. But before we talk about that and unravel this mystery, would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight, and that you would use your words spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to call us to live meaningful, purposeful, difference-making lives. Pray that we might realize we all are called with a purpose. Pray that we would live accordingly. Pray that for myself and for my family, for all of us here. For I ask that in Jesus' name, amen. I know that I will never preach the greatest sermon that has ever been preached, because that's already been done. It was done on a hillside in the northern regions of Israel, in Galilee, early in the life and the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth. It tells us in Matthew chapter 5 that Jesus early in his ministry gathered his disciples on a mountainside, and it was there on that hillside that he laid out his cultural manifesto, his cultural checklist for the revolution that would change the course of human history. In Matthew chapter 5, chapter 6, and chapter 7, Jesus goes through the countercultural checklist, the poetic invitation to his followers to live right side up in an upside down world, to live from the inside out, to be difference makers, to be men and women who live on purpose, who are different on purpose. It was a message that literally changed the course of human history and changed the world as we would come to know it. And it is an invitation to those who would follow him to find their purpose here. It's interesting that Jesus, we don't have any record that Jesus wrote these things down. I mean, it's possible that he had a papyrus scroll that had the sermon that he gave on the mountain that day written down, and he handed it to Matthew. But more than likely, these were principles that Jesus repeated every day. His disciples probably heard him say similar things or parts of the Sermon on the Mount hundreds of times. They heard it as they were walking along the roads in Galilee and Judea. They heard it at night around campfires. They heard it in people's homes. They heard it in the temple. They heard it in synagogues. Hundreds of times he was repeating himself. We know that he preached a similar message to this again in Luke chapter 6. It tells us on a level place in the plains of Judea, years later, Jesus preached a very similar message. And in both cases, he began his message with these poetic couplets, Hebraic promises of blessing. He begins each great sermon, and the Sermon on the Mount begins with what we call the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for they, like those who are poor in spirit, will inherit the kingdom of heaven. He begins with the word makarioi. It is the Greek word that is used in secular Greek literature to indicate the favor of the gods. If you were makarioi, you were extolled by the gods. You were given an advantage. The idea to be blessed means that you have an advantage. You have the favor of God. And Jesus says, blessed are the poor. And if we're paying attention, we go, what? Blessed are the, no. Blessed are the wealthy. Blessed are the influential. Blessed are the powerful. Not blessed are the poor. Anybody start out life and say, you know what my goal is? I want to be blessed by my poverty. That's what I'm shooting for. That's my goal in life. But Jesus says, blessed are the poor, and we're caught off guard by that. I like the quote that Mae West said. Mae West said, I've been rich and I've been poor, and rich is better. And the reality is, we're not really poor. You can't be talking about financial poverty because most of us don't know what that is. Now, you may think, well, Dave, you don't know. My bills are stacking up and I'm under the weight of a lot of financial pressure, but you're not poor. Read a study by the World Health Organization that calculated the necessary annual income for an individual to be in the top 1% richest people in the world. You have any idea what that number was? In America, it's a much larger number. But globally, to be in the top 1% of the wealthiest people on earth, you need to make every year $32,000. That means if you make less than $32,000, you are part of the 99% of the 7 billion people on the planet who live on less than that. If you make over $32,000 a year, you are in the top 1% of the wealthiest people on earth. We do not know what real poverty is. But we understand the benefit of poverty, theoretically. What is the blessing of being poor? Well, it simplifies your life. You don't have complex decisions about whether or not I'm going to take this vacation or that vacation, whether I'm going to buy this new outfit or that new outfit, whether or not I'm going to eat at this restaurant, at that or that restaurant. When you're really poor, you don't have options. You don't have choices. Life is really simple. It's how do I get through the day and make it to tomorrow? My life is simple existence, simple, one foot in front of the other, live one day at a time. That is what poverty does. It focuses our life, and it simplifies our life. But Jesus he's not talking about financial poverty. What does he say in Matthew 5:3, the first beatitude? Blessed are the poor in spirit. He's talking about a different kind of poverty. You see, what wealth does to us is wealth lies to us. Wealth gives us a sense of false superiority. Wealth gives us a faux sense of significance. Because when we're wealthy, we think we're special. When we have great wealth, we think that we have somehow separated ourselves from the rest of humanity. Wealth deceives us into thinking that we are significant. Wealth gives us choices. Wealth gives us options. Wealth gives us a variety of resources. Wealth allows us to secure our lives, to build safeguards. We don't have to worry about the uncertainty of tomorrow because we have the resources to guarantee that we will be safe no matter what the future holds. Wealth gives us a false sense of security, but probably most corrosively, wealth gives us a sense of self-reliance. Wealth gives us a sense that we can make it on our own, that I have no need for any other person or any other thing because I have sufficient resources not only to survive, but to thrive. And that sense of self-reliance is what Jesus is pointing to. And he says, blessed are those who realize they can't make it on their own. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, who realize that they are not self-sufficient, they are insufficient. Blessed are those who recognize their frailty and their need. It is an invitation to recognize that we are not meant for just ourselves. We are meant for greater things. And what does he say we are meant for? We are meant for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, he says. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is something greater than you can imagine, something bigger than ourselves. The promise of the first beatitude is that if we recognize our need, heaven is opened and says, this is the resource you are looking for. It is not in yourself, it is in the kingdom, in heaven, in him. It's a powerful invitation to humility. It's a powerful invitation to recognize our own need. There's a story in Matthew chapter 19 and in Mark chapter 10. And some people call it the story of the rich young ruler. We only know that by implication. It just tells us in Mark chapter 10 that a man came up to Jesus. And he said, teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He literally says to him, good teacher. And there's a parenthetical comment there where Jesus says, why do you call me good? Because if you're calling me good, you're attributing to me some divine prerogative, some purity, some perfection. Is that what you mean? Are you saying that I am as good as God? But that's the parentheses. And Jesus answers his question by saying, keep the commandments. And then he lists off 5 of the commandments. Do not murder, and do not commit adultery, and do not lie, and do not steal, and honor your mother and your father. And he isolates the 5 commandments that have to do with sort of the horizontal relationships we have with other people. He leaves off the vertical commandments about you shall have no other gods, you shall not take the name of the Lord in vain, you shall not worship idols, you should remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, and you should not covet. He focuses on the relational commandments. He says, keep these commandments. And then the man says, I have kept these since I was a boy. And then there's a unique phrase that only appears in this story. It says that Jesus looked at him and loved him. And because he loved him, he says, there's one more thing. There's one thing that you lack. Sell all your possessions and give them to the poor, and come and follow me, and then you will have treasure in heaven. You'll have the kingdom of heaven. When you divest yourself of your identity that is in your possessions and in your wealth and in your self-sufficiency. The story goes on. It says the man was heartbroken. His countenance fell. His face fell. And he went away sad. And both Matthew and Mark say it was because he had great wealth. And then Jesus turns and he looks at his disciples and he says, how hard is it for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven? For a rich man to inherit what is promised, it is as impossible as a camel going through the eye of a needle. You see, the lesson of the rich young ruler, the lesson of the first beatitude, is that we don't have to have. We have to give. We don't have to have. We don't have to just accumulate. We don't have to just acquire. It's not that we keep score because we have more. We don't have to have. We have to give. It's much like if you were a brilliant chef who prepared amazing dishes that no one ever ate. Or you were a brilliant teacher who could communicate complex subjects to rambunctious children, and yet you never had students. You were a brilliant surgeon who knew how to cure all kinds of diseases, but you never had any patients. You see, we don't have to have, we have to give. This is the lesson of what Jesus is talking about in the first Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, because we realize that we have to give. Our need prepares us to make available to meet the needs of others. You may be sitting here today and you're like, Dave, I don't know what my purpose is. I mean, I don't like my job. I've struggled in my relationships. I really feel like life is meaningless. Then let it go. Give it away. We hold on by letting go. What Jesus is saying is that we inherit the kingdom of heaven when we gain it by losing it. We win by surrendering. We hold on by letting go. We don't have to have, we have to give. I can tell you how you find your way to finding your purpose. It's through generosity. It's through serving. You want to find your purpose in life? Next week, volunteer for an hour to go spend in the nursery and hold an infant who's crying and upset because their mother isn't there. Or even more dangerous, go spend it with the preschoolers and the toddlers. You take your life in your hands. If we had 2 adults for every child in our nursery, we'd still be outnumbered. Work with the children, work with their teenagers. Just volunteer to help out. What can I do? What can I do to contribute to the needs of others in this community? How can I serve? You want to find your purpose for life? Go out to East Austin on some week and direct traffic. Or put food in boxes that you place in people's trunks. Or stand there and pray with people who are coming to get diapers for their children because they can't afford to buy them themselves. And ask them how their life is, and ask them if you can pray for them. You want to find your purpose? You want to give your life meaning? Give it away. We have to give. This is the point of the first beatitude. The first beatitude is an invitation to join into a rebellion, to live right side up in an upside down world, to live with a sense of meaning because we are giving ourselves away. And the things that we have to share. And that's how you inherit the kingdom of heaven. It is a call to a rebellion. It is a call to live a life that is upside down and inside out. The Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon ever preached, is a call and invitation to be a part of making a difference on purpose. And that is our purpose. It was Albert Schweitzer, the famous explorer and missionary, who said this: "The purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others." Mary Kay Ash, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics, said, "We must have a theme, a goal, a purpose in our lives. If you don't know where you're aiming, you don't have a goal. My goal, my purpose, is to live my life in such a way that when I die, someone can say, 'She cared.'" The author and philosopher Tracy Kidder said, "The purpose of life is not to be happy, but to be worthy of happiness. Helen Keller famously said, "Many people have a wrong idea of what constitutes true happiness. It is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose." In the early 1990s, a psychotherapist named Carolyn Riff created what she called the 6 factors of psychological well-being, and it became a standard therapeutic tool that clinicians would use in evaluating people's emotional and psychological health. And she broke it down into 6 categories. If you scored high in environmental mastery, autonomy, personal growth, positive relations with others, self-acceptance, and the 6th category, purpose in life. The American Psychological Association put her theory to the test, and they examined people, and what they found was astonishing. Their study found and explored the relationship between the well-being, between person's psychological well-being and the importance of purpose in life as put forth in Rife's model. The study indicated that persons who aspired singularly for financial success with no other clear purpose in life scored lower on all other measures of psychological well-being. But the opposite was true, that individuals who indicated a strong goal orientation and conviction that their life had meaning and contributing also scored high in affiliation, intimacy, and contributing to one's community, and indicated an overall high measure of psychological well-being. Knowing your purpose is the directive that points us toward emotional, physical, and spiritual health. And the invitation is given to us. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It is the invitation to a life of purpose, a life characterized by generosity and service. This is poverty of spirit, and this is where we find our meaning. So I leave you with the question we began with. Why are you here?